bin manager said that we're going to sometimes imagine a skill set like 15 years and we never don't know what happens.
You mean the rabbit utility?
I use, are you familiar with R?
I've heard of it.
So like, we're trying to find ways of like adding parameters to things.
Right. Okay.
And they kept saying imagine had answers to that.
Okay.
But really hard.
Okay. It sounds like it might have been like a consulting project. Maybe just.
Yeah.
I'm Aurora. Hi.
Joe.
I didn't really use it as a graph. Yeah, that's what. And you're in Philly, I would assume, not New York. Okay. So my name's Aurora. I run the kind of Philly, New Jersey area a little bit. So let us know. I mean, on your end, I know you're a big company, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of times that there's local. So let us know if there's anybody locally that wants to talk more further than that.
You say your territory goes up to New York too?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, I don't handle all of New York. I have just a few select towns, but mostly all of New Jersey and Philly.
Okay.
We have a couple counterparts. So sometimes they work.
Yeah. There's definitely some local needs.
Yeah. So
Thank you. We're awesome.
Thank you.
Will do.
and help yourself beer, wine.
Awesome name.
Yeah, no.
Well, then now you have it. It means dawn.
Oh, for real?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Very nice. I feel like I'm in the tent.
You want to take these two? Yeah.
I'm a KP. I look like I'm comfortable here.
Roll down the hallway. Patrick, do me a favor, you can sign in. Just let me know.
Oh, are they?
What'd you decide on?
October.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you mentioned there was
Cold beverage. What is that dinosaur?
I'm MacBook Pro. I just let it go.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just trashed my 2011. Yeah, I think my roommate sold it for me today.
Well, it's definitely, actually, this is my mom's.
Yeah, well, at least you got good use out of it.
Like, for instance, it doesn't have a battery in it. So it has to be plugged in.
But he's still on.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I used to be Giancarlo, and now everyone just calls me John.
But his friend just called
Hey,
me.
man. What's going on?
Joe.
Joe. Is that John? John. Nice to meet you. You from Karen Timberlake? No, I'm not. Wherever Mike went, we are from AKA. Oh, okay. Engineers down the street. I'm from Kushamoose. Kushamoose Architecture? Yeah. Great name. Okay.
I didn't pick it. I don't think they picked it either. They were born with it.
Just born with the name, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm leading the charge, man.
All right, well, sign in for me.
I'm gonna turn up the VPN.
Right, the training.
Oh, yeah.
Majority. So we do a lot of customized training. So are
Like
you,
for each department.
yeah, so are you guys like, did you get training in-house?
So I have outside people to try to help us out. Might be here today.
Jenna?
Yeah.
I know you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, we actually have him do a training session. But I'm like the first line of defense. So I'm the one who gets picked apart. And then,
So, but yeah, keep this in mind that if you need additional, you can also use your expertise around the
I would need to know right now. But I know they're planning to roll out a firm-wide or everyone. Yeah, so that's.
And we're never going to small operation size, we have expertise in small
So, yeah, I don't know if they use
Carl?
Yes.
Hi, Carl, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so you want to start at 6:15, we're just kind of all getting settled, we're drinking food, you want to start about 6:15?
again?
Not really.
Sound good?
That was that most of that phone call.
Did you hear me?
Sorry, did you say you're going to start in, I didn't hear the time.
6:15? Around 6:15?
6:15, yep. It's a couple minutes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Aurora with Imaginet Technology. So we're going to get started, but if you want to sign in, if you didn't sign in, I know a couple people didn't sign in, and then there's beer and wine up here, and the food is getting set up, so help yourselves, and then we can all kind of get cozy, and Carl will start in a few minutes, okay? We're just waiting on 4, and then we should be good to go on the food. Oh, password? If there's a KT guest network, and I have to ask, wait, what is it? It's KT, might be 19123 KT.
That's it.
Am I right?
KT
It's small,
19123 KT.
Lowercase T, 19123, lowercase kt. You look like an in-house. So we're all good.
The reason I had this, that, was the whiskey.
All right, very good. Help yourself, guys. So there. Help yourselves, the food is ready if you guys are hungry. Help yourselves.
There's one back there.
There's one in the middle of the room. Only one phone.
Oh, you in the back there, I need it. You snuck in.
Thanks.
Yeah,
might need to.
Why don't you just make it through that wall?
Oh, that's okay.
Make it really good.
I've been here before.
Sure, I think screws in here. A little double dipping. Yeah,
I run hot.
I put one out there. Yeah.
Carl, are you still with us?
I am still with you.
All right. Well, you know, it's 6:15. I think it probably makes sense for you to get started. And Ifri's downstairs checking in some stragglers, but if they don't make it in person, we hope they'll make it in spirit or in stream land. So feel free to get started.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to be part of the Philadelphia Dynamo's user group, even if it is from
up in the Great White North of Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Oh, wow.
Nice and cool, probably.
Actually, it's not too bad. No snow yet, so we're okay.
I heard Denver just had snow
Really? Good day.
yesterday.
Joe?
So I think what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take a look at a session that I did for Built North America called Dynamo Packages. Have you tried these yet? Well, I'm just taking a moment to see if I can mute you guys on your end while I'm talking, just so it's not quite as choppy.
Sounds like a plan. That way we can drink and eat without worrying about it.
There you go. And if you have any questions, you can certainly throw them into the chat, and then I'll unmute. All right, all is quiet. So let's start again. So we are going to take a look at Dynamo Packages. Have you tried these yet? This was a session that I put together for the Built North America Conference back in August, formerly known as the Revit Technology Conference. So what we are looking at here today, once my technology starts to play nice, a quick little agenda. So introductions, we're going to start talking about how do we get packages. We're going to take a look at some what I call essential packages, ones that everyone should definitely be using. We'll then move forward and take a look at some packages you may have heard of, you may not have heard of. We'll spend a little bit of time on package management. So how do we do a network deployment? How do we put it onto a network? Things like that. And then time that's left, we'll go ahead and take some questions. So for the introductory part, it's always a little bit awkward to talk about yourself. That's why I love this particular PowerPoint slide, because it does the talking for me. So yes, that handsome fellow on the screen is me, Carl Storms. As I mentioned, I'm coming to you live from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I work with Imaginet Technologies. I'm a solutions consultant. I've been working with Imaginet since 2012. Been working with BIM since 2008, and really been in the AC industry since '98. So if you look real close, you can see there are a few gray hairs in that goatee from my time in the industry. So enough with introductions. Let's go ahead and kick it into high gear. So the first thing is, how do we get packages? Or maybe I'll take it one step back, and what are packages? So seeing how this is a Dynamo's user group, I'm going to make the assumption that we all at least understand what Dynamo is. And what we can do with these packages is we can add on or facilitate things that we couldn't do with out-of-the-box information. So when we're working inside of Dynamo, we're always working with nodes. Sometimes the out-of-the-box nodes aren't sufficient or don't do exactly what it is that we need to do. And the great thing about working with Dynamo is the fact that there's a very awesome community of people that are always willing to help out. And they can do this in the form of creating custom packages. And then they can upload these to what we call the package manager and share them with the rest of the world. So we can get to the package manager a couple ways. We can go to the website that we see here on the screen, dynamopackages.com, and from there we can fire up the Dynamo Package Manager and take a look at what we've got going on in the world of Dynamo packages. When we fire that up, we get something that looks a little bit like this. So we've got our package manager, and it tells us all of the goodies that are going on. Now, if I were to pull that up live, this is what we see right now. And what those numbers represent at the cross at the top is how many different packages have been installed. So we're almost at 750,000 packages, which is pretty impressive. How many different packages there are, so just about 1,200, and then how many people have authored them, so about 400 different authors. We can also see that it tells us information about the newest package, most recently updated, most installed, most dependent, all that sort of stuff in there. Of course, we can also go to browse or search and look for something particular. You start typing in something in, it'll bring up the information that you're looking for. We can sort by names, groups, all that sort of stuff. We also have the ability, once you've found what you're looking for, say we want the archilab.net package, we can select on it and get a little bit more information. We can download it right from here. When we click on the download, it fills us full of all the information about this particular package. Now this one, the archilab.net package by Conrad Soban, is definitely one of the ones that you need to have, and we'll talk a little more about it later on. But as you can see, it tells us all sorts of things about it, some information about the package, versions, and all sorts of history about that particular package. So you can go ahead and download that package right from this particular interface. Of course, a lot of the times when we're working with Dynamo, we're doing so from the actual Dynamo interface inside of the Dynamo system. So to do that, we can, as we saw here, browse through, take a look at the package, and as you can see, once it downloads it. It's sort of a bizarre little name that we can look at. Or once we open up the Dynamo interface, we can go to the package tab, look for search for package, and then that'll bring up this interface here. The search functionality inside of Dynamo is a little slow. It's just the way that it's been for as long as I've been working with Dynamo because of all the stuff in the background. And usually the first time you type something in, it doesn't necessarily give you the information that you're looking for. So once you see the screen pop up, just go back one character or two, and it'll pull up the information that you want. And as you can see, when we've got a look for what we're looking for in the package manager, we can also find out information about that particular package directly from inside of Dynamo. Now, once we have our packages, or we want to see what type of packages we have installed, again, from that same location inside of Dynamo under packages, we can now go to the manage packages location. And that's going to show us all the packages that we have installed inside of our system. Once again, you'll see we've got our Clockworks for Dynamo package highlighted there, and we have the ability to see all of the information about that particular package. Now, if I were to bring into live real-time Dynamo, and we quickly take a look at that, we pull up our packages. We can search for a package. And again, we'll keep it consistent. We'll say Clockwork. Now, as we're sorting through and looking at these packages, you'll see that there's a couple of different versions of Clockwork. It is another one of the essential packages that we'll talk about. So as we scroll down, we'll see we've got different versions. Andreas named his based on the version of Dynamo that it was suited for. So you can see 6.3, 0.7, 0.82, 0.9x, and the most current version is the Clockworks Dynamo 1.x. You'll see that the other versions have a little deprecated added to them as well, which means you can still download them, but they're no longer supported. If I were to select the Clockwork for Dynamo 1, I give it a little tap. Again, it tells me some information about that particular package. The information that goes in the description is all at the discretion of the person that is creating that package. So some of them have a whole bunch of information here. Some of them have a little information. Others have none at all. It's really at the prerogative of the person that's creating the package. We also can see older versions, so if there's something you need from an older version, you can certainly download that, although by default, it's always going to kick out the most recent version. We also have the ability to visit the package website, should the person that created it put it in there, as well as the repository. Generally speaking, the package repository is going to be the GitHub location. That's where any code that's involved with it is stored, and because it's community source, that usually means that other people can get in there and play with that code should they be so inclined. Again, it's at the discretion of the person that's uploading this package, whether or not they have a repository or want to share it. Same with the website. If we decide that we want to go ahead and download that package, we can simply just hit little install, and it wants us to make sure that we're going to install it. We say OK, and it's going to fire up that and bring it down and do some downloading for us. As it's going out into the World Wide Web and finding that information and pulling it down, we're going to get a little drop box that pops up that tells it that it's downloading it. Now, one of the things that we find, particularly when I'm working across this wonderful interface called WebEx, that sometimes it takes a little bit slow. Anybody that's done any scripting, or in this case, Python scripts, it'll let you know that that's involved in there, whether you want to continue. Of course, we do. And then you'll see we get a little gray dialog box that lets us know that it's downloading. Once it's completed the download, it'll turn blue. It shows installed. And if we go over here, we now see that I now have Clockwork installed in my Dynamo. If we go back and look at the manage packages, you'll see it tells me the 2 different packages that I currently have installed, as well as the version. If we click the 3 little dots, it gives me some information. I can uninstall. I can show contents. If you click show contents, it tells us all of the nodes that are included inside of it. Now, Clockwork has 370 some odd nodes, so you can see there's quite a few in here, but it allows me to know. So if I'm looking for a particular node, I can now search for it. I can also say show my root directory, and sometimes this comes in handy because it's going to take you to where it's actually located inside of your wonderful C database, or inside your, whatever you call your local drive, where all the information is put and stored. And of course, from here, we can also uninstall should we want. Say uninstall. Now, what this is going to do is it tells you that it's going to uninstall after the fact. You say OK. Some packages will instantly uninstall. Other packages will say pending uninstall, which means I need to close down Dynamo. In this case, also close down and restart Revit. And then the next time I open up Dynamo, that package will no longer be there. So that's your world tour for dealing with packages and how we get them installed to work with Dynamo. Again, fairly intuitive interface. Again, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the package manager to spit out the content for you. Just be patient and you'll be good to go. Now, later on, nearing the end of our presentation tonight, we'll take a look at how we can manage those packages as far as how we're going to store them, whether it's on a network drive and information like that. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later on. But for now, let's move on to our essential packages. So these essential packages are sort of, for me anyways, the 5 packages that should always be sort of the first ones that you download or you have installed. I think you'll see in a couple slides that it's not just me that thinks this. They're also the top 5 downloaded packages out there. They're such for a reason. So again, if we go to our package manager, and you can see even this particular slide was taken from probably 24 hours ago. And when we just showed it live on the screen, our number here was 74 and change. So just how many installs happened just over the course of 24 hours inside of Dynamo land. So again, you can see our most installed packages. And again, as I mentioned, they're the most installed for a reason. So the ones that we're going to take a look at as the essential packages, the must-haves, the ones that you really should not live without are these 5 packages here. So we have the archielab.net. The author is Conrad Soban, and you'll see there's a link to his website where he lists some tutorials and talks about everything related to this particular package, as well as the current version. Now, these version numbers are current as of the 7th. Just like all things that are community driven, some packages are updated, weekly, almost daily. Other packages, whenever there's a major release. Some packages are created for a specific project or purpose and are never updated again. Again, the beauty and the pain of working with an open source environment. The next package is Clockwork for Dynamo, and again, the current version is 1.x. The current version of Dynamo that we're running on, or current stable version, is 1.3.1. This is by Andreas. You can also check out his details on badmonkeys.net. Lunchbox for Dynamo. This is the most popular, most downloaded. Nathan Miller has been in the industry for a long time as far as Dynamo goes. He sort of started off as a Grasshopper guy, and he ported over his Lunchbox for Grasshopper nodes into Dynamo. I think that's why they've been around so long, because they're that popular. I guess it's probably not right to call him the new kid on the block, but somebody that you may have heard of and that's certainly moving up in the ranks, John Pearson, with his Rhythm package. John does a great lot of research and a lot of community help, reaching out to people, helping them out with all things Dynamo, and his Rhythm package is steadily growing with some really cool nodes that you need to have. And the last one is Spring Nodes by Dimitri. He's also a member of the Bad Monkeys group. So let's go ahead and take a look at what some of these packages look like for real. So I'm just going to take a moment to pull over Dynamo. All right. So I should mention a couple things. One, that at the end of the presentation, I'll make the PowerPoint as well as the handout that I did for Built North America available for the folks at the user group to put on the website and share as you need. So all this information will be available for you there. I run all of my example scripts off of this same Revit file. It's just a basic sample Revit file that comes with the out-of-the-box Revit. I'm currently running off 2017 because that's what I made my scripts for. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that some may call me courageous. Most will call me a little bit silly to try to do live demonstrations for about 25 different Dynamo packages, so there will be a little bit of lag. I will apologize for that in advance, but it does give you a time to take a breath and grab another drink or another bite of the gracious food that you have there in between. So with all of the disclaimers out of the way, let's take a look at Dynamo. So the first thing that I'm going to do when I pull up my Dynamo, as you'll look right now, you'll see I've got a couple of scripts or packages loaded. What I've going to done, and this will give away some of the stuff that we're going to talk about later, but it just makes my life easier now, so I'm going to go ahead and do it, is if we go up underneath the Settings tab, you'll see that we have the ability to manage nodes and package paths. So if I select that, it's going to pop up what we have here. And right now, I just have the default path. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another path. And this is going to allow me to add in those 5 essential packages that I have to load them directly. And as you'll see, they now popped up back inside of my package, and I now have them available to use. So the first one that we want to take a look at, and I'm just going to do them alphabetically just because it's easier, is the archielab.net, or as you see up here, it's called archielab_Grimshaw. When Conrad first developed this package, he was working with the Grimshaw. There's the name. So I'm going to open up a package, or a script, I should say. And all of these scripts will be made available to you as well. So we've got a couple of options in here. And what I've done is gone through some of these packages and picked out some of the nodes that I think would be helpful on sort of a regular basis in a general workflow. They're usually not the most complex nodes, and they're also usually not the scripts that require a ton of nodes. It makes them a little easier to show here, but it gives you an idea of some of the content that we can do inside of a project. So the first thing that we want to take a look at, and I'm just going to unplug these guys so that when I run the script, I don't get crazy stuff going on. So the first thing that we can do with our Archilab is we can throw on some view templates. I'm going to zoom in here. And you'll see that we have the ability to set view templates directly from a Dynamo script. And anytime you see one of these little notes, that depicts that that particular node came from the package. So our view template came from the package as well as the set view template. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my level 1 views and I'm going to change them with our view template. I'm just going to throw this down here so that we can take a look at what our level 1 view right now looks like before I run the template. Flip my screen so we can sort of see both. Go ahead and hit run. And you'll see that it applied the PDUG view template. Again, not earth-shattering, but you can sort of see that the benefit of doing something like this, very simple. You can set up a script, you can run it through the Dynamo player, and have this applied very quickly to multiple views inside of a project. Or if you're setting up a template, you can do this very quickly in play. When you run a script inside of Dynamo, it affects Revit. So whatever's happened has happened. If I were to close out of Dynamo, whatever the changes have happened have stayed there. This also means that we have the ability to just simply undo a script inside of Revit as well and have it go back. The next thing that we can do is we have the ability, as we can see here already, is pull a bunch of room information from our project. And all this simply does is goes into the interface, and if I switch over to the second level, and it pulls our information in. And right now you can see I ran it and went to my second level. It pulled out, what do I got? 11 different rooms. Currently I have the exclude unplaced defaults. Turn that back on, and I run it again. You'll see that my list got shorter because it excluded the unplaced rooms from inside that project. So if I had a bunch of rooms inside of my project that aren't placed, I would obviously don't want those on my list for whatever reason that I'm pulling that information out, whether it's to put inside an Excel schedule and send out to somebody. I need to know the information. All of that content is easily attainable with this one particular node. This one's also pretty cool. What this allows us to do is to find out what is actually inside these rooms. So if I go back to my first level again, pull up, and you can sort of see that we have definitely got some furniture inside of our rooms, kitchen and dining, living. So if I take the furniture category and I connect it up into my elements, and then I take my rooms and I connect it up into my elements, and then I go ahead and run this graph now, you'll see what it's done is gone through and pulled out a list of all the room names, but also over here what it's given me is a list that matches. So as you can see, if I go down my indices, when I get to indices number 7, which is the kitchen and dining, so this area up here, you'll see that it's telling me all of the content that is inside of that room. So just because these elements have an insertion point that's inside of the room, it now knows that they belong to that room, and it's pulled all that information out, and we now have access to all that information. Go down to 11. That's our living room, and you can see it's pulled in the information from our living room as well. So again, just a quick little node that gives us the ability to pull information that comes in place. You can imagine that if you're doing a large project, say a hospital, and you need to keep a room data sheet up to snuff, you have the ability to run this node real quickly. It's going to tell you all the equipment that's inside of that room. You can then export it out to an Excel spreadsheet and have that information updated every time that you run this script again. The other thing that we can do as well, and I'm just going to swap this back to false, is another node is it tells you duplicated items. Again, another handy node if we don't want to have duplicates. And I can just pull that list inside of my node, give it a quick run, and it tells me what I've got. So the first one here are my unique indices. So each indices that are unique. And then the second one is my duplicate indices. So 4, 5, 9, and 10. And if I just scroll back here and take a look at my original list, you'll see that number 8 is unique. And now it's just going by the name. So it's called room. So the first one is the unique one. And you'll see over here that 9 and 10, which are also called room, are not unique. They're a duplicate of that original. So again, a handy little node that allows you to pull things that are duplicate out of the list very quickly. And then once you have that information, the world's your oyster with what you want to do with it. All right, so let's take a look at the next essential package. I'm going to close out of this. And the next one is clockwork. Now, you've probably heard this said multiple times. I've said it many times at conferences, that while working with Dynamo is visual programming, you don't necessarily need to be a programmer to work with it, which is absolutely 100% true. However, having a logical mind and understanding how programming works and some of the things that you would find when doing coding is essential. Some of those things that come with the clockwork package, as you see in my little group here that I have stuck together as math, are just simple things that we can add that aren't out-of-the-box nodes that can make your life a little bit simpler. So if I scroll up here and just hit run, you see that it's simply just added 1 to 14 or took 1 away from 14. Again, not earth-shattering, but these are simple little things that you may need to quickly add or subtract that we can do with this custom node. We also have something called math ceiling and math floor. And what this node allows us to do is to choose how we want to round. Now, there is an out-of-the-box node that gives you a ceiling and a floor, but that just allows you to round up to the next whole number. What this one does is it allows you to have a precision. So as you can see, the particular number here is 14.26. I've got my precision to every 0.25 or quarter inch. And then you'll see my output when I round up is 14.5. And when I round down, 14.25. Again, floor is rounding down, ceiling is rounding up. And then multiple of. So simply we kick something in place. Is 25 a multiple of 125? Yes, it is. Is 17 a multiple of 125? No, it is not. Again, it's these simple little things that you could use on a very regular basis, which makes this one of those nodes or packages that's essential or a must-have. Now this one, surprise, there we go, don't want to ruin it. Sometimes stuff is just for fun. What this package allows you to do is it allows you to convert any text or string information into Morse code. So if I plug this back in, run, you can see I now have the dots and dashes to type out PDUG in Morse code. And again, it quickly throws in the dots and dashes to do Morse code. I'm not sure of a practical use for that, but it's kind of fun. Another thing that's pretty cool, anytime you see one of these nodes like this guy here, where there's no inputs, it just automatically goes out and reads the information. So this went out and read the information about the current version of Revit that I'm using. And if I hover over this, open up the list, you'll see that it tells me I'm using Revit 2017, version 2017, the actual build, and the language. Again, sometimes this comes in handy if you're checking a whole bunch of different contents and you want to know where it came from. You now have the version information. This one's also pretty cool. The ability to pull elements, whether they're loadable or system. And again, why that's a big thing is because by default, it's not super easy to pull system information out of Dynamo. It's usually just loadable, like furniture, doors, that sort of thing that we have the ability to pull in. So what I've done here is I've taken the walls category. I've brought it into my all place types of categories. So it's pulling in all of my walls. I've got my all elements of family plus, which means it doesn't care whether it's a loadable or system family. It pulls out all the information. So if I run this again, and I just quickly hover over this, you'll see that it shows I now have all of my wall types. So it was able to go in and pull out all of the wall types from the project, which is pretty handy. Another node that this comes in that I use all the time is the list.count occurrences. What this node does is it does two things. It takes a list, in this case, our list of our element names, which are all of our wall types in the project, and it splits it into two categories. The first one is our unique elements. So this tells me the 9 different wall types that I have in my project. So I now have them. And the other one tells me how many occurrences of each one I have. So how many occurrences of my timber-clad wall do I have? Well, that's indices number 1. I have 8 occurrences of it. My cavity wall sliders, I've got 1. My CLW1, which is 5, I have 6. And this works with any list that you can input it. So you can see how that can become very handy, especially if you're using something like this that allows us to have elements that are loadable or system. And you may have seen going around in the background, I've got this little shape back here. This little guy right here. This is what you call a buckyball. And this is another thing that a little bit of fun that we can do with our buckyball that allows us just to pull it into the project, and this node from Clockworks takes all that information. I throw in a radius, run it again. Now I'm going to get a much bigger buckyball in place so that I can play with. Maybe not the most practical thing, but cool nonetheless. So that quickly winds us through the world of 2 of our essential packages. Let's carry on to number 3. Now we're going to fire up Lunchbox. Now a couple things that come in handy here. As you're working away inside of Dynamo, you may find that you end up with the dreaded null. No information. And a lot of times if you're trying to get a list, having nulls in there is going to cause you a problem. So what this node from Lunchbox allows us to do is to take the nulls and replace it with whatever we want. So I quickly put together just a random list of numbers and names and all sorts of stuff inside a code block. And then I said replace the null with null no more. I go ahead and run that script. I now have a new list and my nulls have been replaced with null no more. Probably not what you would actually use, but you can see you have the ability to replace that null with whatever it needs to be replaced with to make that list usable. Out of the box, there are definitely nodes, one, for example, called clean, that will just remove the nulls from the list altogether, and sometimes that's what you want, but sometimes you need something a little bit more. There we go. Some other cool stuff that we can do with our friend here, the lunchbox. Room collector. This is a really cool node, and a lot of these collector nodes that different people make inside of their packages are super handy because they gather a whole bunch of information, and they allow you to, at any point, gather information. The only input that is required in this case is a toggle, so to tell it whether or not you want to actually run that information. So if I turn my toggle to true, and I go ahead and give that a run, the first thing you'll notice is that it actually pulls the information into my project. So I now have the rooms, I don't know why I did air quotes because you can't see them, the rooms inside the project, so we have access to the geometry of the rooms. But more importantly, you see we've got the names, numbers, area, unique ID. Any of that stuff is now at our fingertips, and we have the ability to pull it in and take a look. Likewise, we can now do similar things with family instances. So, as you can imagine, this will collect information on instances of families inside of our project. So again, two inputs here, whether or not it's true or false. So true will activate the node. And then family types for the type of family that we want. So I've chosen our bar chair, which are these little guys up here. Select that to true, run it, and you'll see that all of the information about my rooms are now gone because I turned that to false. And now I just have the location of our chairs. And you'll see I can change the element, the location, the level that they're on, unique ID, element ID, all of that information is now available to me from this one simple node that collects all this information. As I change things inside of the Revit model, run this again, it pulls in that information. So we've always got the latest and greatest information in regards to that. We also have the ability to get parameter values. So that means we can pull information from any parameter inside of our element. So I pull my element, and I'm just going to run this guy again to get my room information. Now I've got all of my room information. I run again. And I now have all of my room numbers that I want when it was created. Wrong one. Oh. That's it. There we go. Brings in the information. So again, a way to pull values and parameter information through that's not quite the same as what we get with out-of-the-box nodes. Lunchbox has been around for a long time, so this is just a very small sampling of what you can get from there, but it gives you an idea of some of the things that you can use and perhaps on an everyday use case. 3 down, 2 to go. Now we're going to take a look at rhythm. So a couple things here. First, what we like to call a teachable moment. So as people that create these packages make updates, adjust for newer versions of Revit, make changes, you'll see from time to time you may find that you had a package that, a graph that worked awesome. Everything in it was perfect, good to go, and then you go open it up and you get this. Anytime you see a red node, that means that node no longer exists. So that can mean two things. One, I don't have the rhythm package. But because this one isn't red, and because if I go over here and scroll down, you see I do have the rhythm package. So that's not it. So the second option, once we found out that we do have the package in case, is that this came from an older version or newer version. So it either doesn't exist anymore, or the version I have doesn't have it. So when I was testing this earlier today and I saw this turn up red, I reached out to John, and he's in the process of changing some of his nodes over from Python to C#. It makes them a little faster, a little more stable. And this particular one, he just hasn't updated and put back in the package yet. So it's coming back. But for now, it doesn't exist. That's why it's not there. But I thought I'd leave it in so that if you ever got a red node, you understand what it's about. The other one is still in play. And then what I like about these ones, as you can see, they're case insensitive. So whatever the parameter name is, it doesn't matter. The majority of times when you're dealing with this, you have to make sure that the parameters, so in this case comments, is exactly right. So even though I've got it spelt all weird this way, if I go ahead and hit run, you can see that the comment is PDUG, which is the wall that I've selected, and it tells me the information. If I go back into my credit file and I select the wall, you'll see in the comments, PDUG. Another one that's pretty cool is this guy here. Get parameter value by instance or type. Comes in super handy because it will get the parameter no matter whether it's an instance type parameter or a type-based parameter. So in this case, I've selected a door, and I put in my mark parameter, hit run, and you can see it gives me the mark. So this guy right here. And if I change it to width, which is a type parameter, hit run, it gives me the information. I select edit type, pull it over and scroll down, and we see that we've got our width here. So again, doesn't seem like a big thing, and yes, out of the box you can get type-based information, you can get instance-based information, but this one node allows you to do both. So it's one node that gives you 2 times the information. This one's pretty cool. And what this allows us to do with a family, and when you download the rhythm package, I'll just quickly show you. When you download the rhythm package, with it, inside the extras, and this is it right here, is the 3D room tag family that you need to make this next script work. But essentially what it does is it takes the information from the out-of-the-box room tag, in this case, the name and the number, and it creates it with 3D text so that you can see that information in 3D. So as you can see right now, no room names, no numbers. Level 1, we've got our names and our numbers. I go ahead and change that to true, run it, and we now see that we have our 3D names and numbers inside of a room. So again, you can see how this can become handy for a presentation view, showing the client we want to see the 3D stuff, but we want to know where we're working. We have the ability to take a look at our 3D room tags. Something else that's kind of cool is the ability in this case to update or change our arrowhead design. As you can see, it can change just about any arrowhead that you want. Text notes, tags, room tags, door tags, window tags, wall tags. All you need to do is give it the arrowhead type. Now this is just a simple string input. So you just need to have the name of the arrowhead as it appears inside of Revit. And then we, of course, need to have our Boolean to tell it true so it runs. We scroll in here a little bit to see a bunch of arrowheads. Run. And of course, if I used a different arrowhead, let's try 15 degrees. and they change to 15 degrees. Again, not earth-shattering difference, but it allows us to show what we've got in there. And if I were to go into and now we've got our filled, so it changed the rooms, changed the doors, and also changed our text. So again, perhaps you need to change a bunch of airheads really quickly. There you go, you're set up and you're off to the races. Imagine going through all of the different views inside of a large project and trying to find that. That's a couple clicks and you're done for the entire project. All right, one more to go. Oops, I didn't mean to close that. Give me 1 second. And the last one that we're going to take a look at is Spring Nodes. So a couple things. Perhaps you're the person in charge of taking a look and keeping things up to snuff. Well, you know, once your Revit files start to get really big that we may have a problem. So now we can see how big a file is. And this one has nothing to do with the actual open file that I have. We actually just browse to wherever our Revit file is stored. So in this case, I select File, and I say Run. And it tells me the size in kilobytes. So 29 megabytes, that's fine. We're good, but you know, if you get up into gigabytes or 400 or 500 megabytes, perhaps it's time to take a look. And you can see I didn't have to open up the Revit file, so I could do that. I could open the script. I could check a whole bunch of files very quickly by just pulling it through and running it as we go in the background. Something else, a little bit of fun, you can probably see in the background here, I've got this little star. I can start tweaking around, throw this on automatic. Adjust the star, I can adjust the radius. Again, some of these probably don't have the most practical use, but it just shows you some of the stuff that you can do with Dynamo, and as you can say, pretty much the sky's the limit. Plus, I think it's kind of pretty cool. This next one's pretty cool as well. What this allows you to do, and since I don't need this, I'm going to make this full screen now, is it allows us to actually take and review a Revit interference check from the exported model. So you go into Revit, you run an interference check, you can export it out as an HTML file. This will run that HTML script and tell you all the information about it. So in this particular instance, I can browse through and I can check one of my HTML files. So I've got a couple of different ones. So this one's about doors. So I say OK. I hit run. And it tells me all of my different things. So the clash categories, I'm clashing walls against railings. Do I have any issues? I don't have any issues. There's one case where I do have walls running into railings, and there's 2 clashes. And if I go back to my floors option, run that again, you can see that I now have 7 different issues. I have floors running into stairs and floors running into structural columns. I do have some issues with floors and stairs. I have 3 clashes, and I have some issues with floors and structural columns. I have 4 clashes. Now, clashes is kind of a hard word, at least for me. Usually when I think clashes, I think of some of the stuff that we can get working with Navisworks. The interference checker inside of Revit is not meant to replace Navisworks and doesn't quite give you the same functionality, but it does give you some rudimentary information. As you can see, I clearly have some structural columns that are interfering with some of my floors. Now I can make that information. I can run this again. This is one of those things that you could run in the background. on a weekly, monthly basis to take a look at it and have it sort of as a dashboard type of thing instead of actually going in and running a report inside of each active project. Another thing that this does is allows this Watch Plus, it allows it to take information and take a look at it. So if I were to pull, let's just say my poly curves, it's not that exciting, but so what this does is it allows us to give a pop-up expandable window. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but sometimes it's much easier to read and get the information out from this. I come down and I pull out the information from within my Clash categories. Again, I put that in there, go ahead and run it, and I've got my information. I can resize this window for whatever purpose I need it to be. I can also turn on or off the indices. So as you see right now, I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 6. If those aren't needed for whatever reason that I have this, I can turn off defaults, run this again, and I get the same pop-up without that information. So again, it's just a way to have a different output or display of the information that we're running through Dynamo and take a look at what it is and what it does for us. All right. So that is our 5 essential packages. While I'm switching up to take a look at the other words, I'm going to unmute you guys and see if anybody has any questions about those particular packages.
So, hey Carl, this is Ifri.
Yes.
I had a question about rhythm when you were showing the node that pulled the parameter of the name, whether it was a type or an instance.
Correct.
Whether it was a type or instance. Can that accept a list, or is it one string at a time?
It's one at a time.
Okay.
Now, if it is a list of individual elements, that will work.
The parameter name is only one item at a time?
Correct. So one parameter, but it could be a list of elements as long as they're individual elements. Was there any other questions?
Can you pull the file path of the current Revit project through a node? Is there a node that does that?
Yes, there is. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one it is. I believe it's in the Clockwork as well. They've got a whole list of ones that pull that, as well as, or was it Lunchbox? Now I'm forgetting. But yes, I know there is, in fact, a node that does that. That'll pull the file path of where your particular current Revit project is stored.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and fire up the next one, so I'll throw you people back on mute. All right, so we went through what we call the essential packages, and again, some of them have 300, 400 different nodes in there, so we didn't by any means cover all of them. We barely hit the tip of the iceberg, but you can sort of start to see why those are the most downloaded packages and why it is that people deem them to be essential. Now, these next group of packages, some of them could very easily be essential as well, depending on your workflow. Some of them are a little bit unique. Some of them I chose for rather eccentric type reasons, as we'll see when we get in there, but they all definitely have their values. Now, before I go into this 15 or 16 packages, when I was doing my research for this class for Built, and as I've been doing it for this particular demonstration here, I keep together a Excel spreadsheet, which I will share with the group as well, of all the packages that I come across. So I'm over 100 now. I'm down to 101. And inside this Excel spreadsheet, I've got the name of the package, the latest version, any website if there is some. Some have them, some don't. Dependencies and nodes. So sometimes they'll appear in a final location, or they'll have dependencies. So say, for example, the BVN package has a dependency on Dynamo, Archilab, Lunchbox, Rhino, Ladybug, Spring Nodes. So it has a lot of dependencies, which just means that when you update it, those need to be updated as well. So sometimes it takes a bit of a back and forth to update those. I also have the GitHub location, or the repository, if there is one, as well as a Dynanodes page. If anybody is familiar with Dynanodes, it's a website that was put together by Luke Johnson from What Revit Wants. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there about Dynamo nodes. It's been a while since it's been updated, but all of the stuff that's been around is still there and useful, and it's definitely worth taking a look at, especially if you're getting to know some of these nodes or getting to know some of these packages for the first time. So that's the big group. I sort of pared it down from there to get into a little bit smaller list of nodes to try and make sure that I could fit them all in and still have time to talk about package management at the end. So again, I apologize in advance for what's going to seem like me flying through these to try to get them all explained. All of the graphs that I'm using will be available for you as well. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 that I'm going to try to get through here. And once again, I've got them in alphabetical order just because it's the easiest to go through. So let's go ahead and get started with ampersand. Now I'm just going to swap out. Again, we'll talk about this when we talk about packages, but I have my packages put together in groups. So I've got my essential packages, and I'm just going to remove that. And then I'm going to add in my other packages, which is everything put together, and hit accept. And that's just basically going to load in all those other packages. Now, I have all 100 packages loaded in here. If I was smart, I would pare it down to 20 or so that I'm going to talk about because it takes a while to load them, but I didn't do that. So that's why the little blue wheel is taking a while to scroll through. All right, we're good to go. And let's open up the ampersand. You'll notice that I now have many more packages installed. That's what happens when I swapped over and brought in that other location. It pulled in all those other packages that I have installed. Now, this particular package really has nothing to do with the Revit file that I have open, so I'm going to make it full size. This package is done by Colin McCrone, who does a lot of great stuff with Dynamo, and he really does a lot of cool things when it comes to panels and panel visualization. This is just a small bit of what can be done with his nodes and his knowledge. And if you are interested in panels, facades, doing that sort of stuff with Dynamo, you should definitely go to lynda.com. Colin has a class up there, Dynamo and panel visualization, something to that effect. If you just go to lynda.com and search Colin McCrone, it's the only, it's his only class up there. It's one of only 4 Dynamo classes up there. It's definitely worth taking a look at. So what this particular script does is it allows you to visualize panels. And why this is important is when you're working with panels and pulling the information, you don't always necessarily know where those 4 points are justified, where those nodes are being pulled from. So what this does is it just essentially picks 4 corners from a panel, so think of a curtain wall system, and applies a random color. And by applying this random color, we can now see clearly where each of these panels are. So if I quickly go ahead and run this, so down here in the background, you'll see we now have a list of panels, 8 by 5. You'll also notice that we have some wash. And what's happening is the actual surface, or where the panel would be, is in conflict with the color. So what we can do is we can just turn one of them off. So if I just go up to my surface by patch, I right click, I turn off the preview, then it turned off those grays, and now you can see a little clearly where each particular panel represents or lives, because there is a bright colored 4-point square rectangle, if it didn't have to be square, which these ones are, to show you where that is. One of the few things that comes from that ampersand package, but it's one of the ones that I find most useful, especially if you're working with facades or panelization. And again, plenty more where that came from if you check out Colin's class or any of his talks, any of the many conferences he's been at. But that is ampersand. You'll see up here a bunch of different stuff inside of ampersand. So next is bakery. So bakery is a package put together by Luke from What Revit Wants. Bakery is huge. It's right around the 500 node mark. It used to be dependent on a whole bunch of packages. I think it probably technically still is. And every time you had to update it, it was a real pain to update it. What Luke has done, and it's different than any other package I've come across, is that when you download it, I currently have it installed, so you see there's a whole bunch of different libraries or locations where I can put this in here. When you download it, you're only going to see one node. There's only going to be a single node. And when you click on that single node and put it inside your graph, it's going to give you instructions on how to actually install the package. Now, once you've installed the package, the node goes away. But it basically tells you where to find the package you've downloaded and how to take it out, unzip it, put it in the proper location to have access to all the nodes. So if you download Bakery and you think, why is there only one node and why is nothing there? Put the one node on the canvas, run the graph, it will walk you through, and then you'll have your 500 plus nodes that are available to you. So some of the stuff that we are looking for, we want to get information about what's going on with our particular project. So what this does is it writes an Excel file with a bunch of information about this particular project. So all you need to do is first browse to where you want to save the file. And give it a name. And the next thing is pull the information that you want. So all of my grid elements, all of my level elements, or just my 2D list. So all of my 2D content from the project. So I go ahead and say run. It's going to fire up Excel. And it pulls up this Excel list of all this information based on this particular project that I have in place. Now, it's a predefined set of information, so some of it may be useful, some of it not. You can see we've got some of those dreaded null values in place. But basically, it's telling us, our project base point. Are there any grids? We've got our A grid, our B grid, C, D, E, F, and G, level names, elevations, and our start points. Again, we can sanitize this list as we go through to make it more palatable, but you can see what we can do when we pull that information out. If I close this out, and I try my level elements instead, and it's going to pull up that same thing, and now it's giving me all of my level information inside of my object. So where each level is, level 1 is at 0, 2700, 6000, 3000, 800, 5500. So it's giving us all of our level information. So you can see how this node could be very quick to pull this information, as I call it, quick and dirty document information. To pull that stuff out of your project and get a look at it and have it in an Excel spreadsheet so it can be easily shared. The next one's pretty cool. It allows us to put a whole bunch of information at once. So we select one element, we select the parameter that we want to change, and we change a bunch of parameters at once. Take this back. Place. Unrun my script so we don't ruin the supplies. But we see what we've got here. So what I've got on plan is I've taken all of my rooms. I'm going to change all of the names. So every name is going to be pdug-room, and of course it's the name that I'm changing. So I go ahead and run that, and you'll see that all of my rooms have now changed to that name. Probably wouldn't want to use that particular example, but it shows you the power of what it does and how it can change one parameter in many places right away quickly. So if you had to change something very quickly that happened to occur in 100 spots, all the chairs went from Herman Miller to Walmart. I don't know why they would do that, but they did. You can change that, manufacturing spec of 100 chairs very quickly using that information. We also have the information about our linked file. And where is my linked file? So if I had a linked file, which I thought I did, I'll just quickly throw it in here. So now I've linked a project inside here. Now it's not playing nice. The joys of a live demo. But what it's supposed to do, and this is very similar to the question that we had, except it deals with our linked project, is it pulls in the information from that linked file, and we are able to see it right away. I'm going to just try one more time to make sure that we've got that linked. Okay. There we go. And now you'll see that I've got that. And that happens from time to time when you're working with a graph. You may have to restart it. But you can see it tells me where that file is located. And if I scroll across, I can see all of the, if I can scroll, where all of it is, as well as whether it's relative or absolute. So it'll pull through the information. And it's all of the linked files inside your project. So if it's a large project and you had 20 files linked, it would give you the information on all 20. All right, carrying on. Gonna have to speed up here as I can see we're running out of time quickly. Next one is one called Beaker. Beaker is put up by the folks at Evolve Labs. So John, who does the rhythm package, also works on this package as well. And it gives us some cool things that we can do inside of Revit by collecting some of our content. So the first one, I call it Cool Collector. It'll collect any category and give us information about that category. I've currently got it set to doors. I say OK. I run this through, and as you can see, it's giving me all of my elements, so the name of the door as well as its actual element ID, the name of each door, and how many doors I have in my project. And that will work for any category, rooms, whatever you want to think of, it allows you to do that inside. Another cool node that allows us to filter things. So again, whatever our element is, so I've chosen category of furniture. The value, so what I'm filtering by is chair. I hit run, and you'll see I have all of the chairs. Now, I happen to know that there are a few that have a lowercase c. if I run that again, you can see that it gives me the information where there is a lowercase c in that. So it does get filtered very specifically between what you're looking for. Another one that's handy, it's another collector. It pulls out information about all the sheets inside of our project. If I go ahead and run this, you can see it tells us the sheet. So it gives me the actual element ID. Sometimes when you're working inside of Dynamo, you need the actual element ID. It gives me the sheet names. It gives me the sheet numbers. It gives me the title blocks. And it also tells me all of the views that are on each sheet. So again, handy information that you may need when you're creating title blocks, sheets, what have you, all coming from one very handy node. The next one is called BIM for Structure. There's 4 nodes that are part of this package. As the name might suggest, a lot of them have to do with working with structural elements. But this one is just a general productivity node, and I think it's kind of cool. So I can choose model element, choose my model element, run, and then it gives me the information about it. So where's my X vector, my Y vector, my Z vector? In this case, the insertion point. There's lots of times where we need to place something or find out where an element is placed by insertion point. I can also find out what it's rotated. As you can see by my 89.99999 that this was obviously created in metric and converted to imperial or vice versa, so you don't have that nice 90 degrees. Quick and dirty, really handy, and finding that insertion point can be very handy as you're working your way through. The BIM morph nodes. So we can pull through individual schedule information. So if you have a schedule inside of Revit, and for whatever reason you only need the information off of a single row, this allows you to pull that information. So you can see I've got my planting schedule. I want row 0, so basically the headings. I go ahead and run that, and it pulls me the information from that type mark, common name, count. So we can do that. If I were to change this to number 1, run it again, it's now giving me the information 1 row down, the first line through. So there can certainly be times where you need just individual information from a schedule without pulling the whole schedule. You can do that. Another really cool node this allows us to do is duplicate sheets. If I scroll down into my package, you'll see, of course I ran it, so I've already got it. What this allows us to do is to duplicate sheets. And I've got a couple things that I can do. So what are my sheets? So I want all of the sheets, 0 to 5, which means 6 sheets. I have 6 sheets inside my project. Yes, do I want to run it? True or false? Duplicate with views. So not only does it duplicate, but it duplicates the views. What are my duplicate options? Now I wrote a little code block here to remind myself what we're doing here. So if I put 1 in there, it duplicates the detail. If I put 2 in there, it duplicates its dependent. If I put 0, it just duplicates. So you choose which one of those you want. So I'm going to duplicate with detail. And then I can add a suffix or a prefix. So my edug. If I say OK, I can turn these both on. As you can see, I've got my packages down there. I'm just going to unplug this one. Run. And I now have created, excuse me, duplicate sheets with the suffix that I was looking for. It took 30 seconds to run that script. Imagine if you had to do that, though, how much quicker it would be than doing it by hand, especially if you had 100 sheets that you needed to recreate. And the last one we'll look at is similar idea, but it allows us to rename our sheets. When we run this, the little node here we can do sheets. So I'm pulling the sheets information, and then we can rename it. So you can see I've got my list of names, and it's also got numbers. Now, if I take out this, the node's not going to be satisfied. All you need is a blank string. So that's why in my code block, I just have 2 quotations. There's nothing actually in it, but it just plugs it in to satisfy the node. And now if I run this, you'll see that it'll rename all of my sheet numbers down here with my pdug underscore and what have you. And you'll see it's renamed all of my sheets. So again, some handy things that come into play when you're working with sort of project maintenance in the back end. BVN, another couple of handy things to have in play. A lot of times when we're going through and we're working with our project, we want to make sure that our rooms are nicely centered as well as our room tags. So these 2 nodes do 2 things. One, they center the tag inside the room as well as centering the room. The reason we want to center that room location because the tag reads the center of the room location. That's why we use both of these. I can turn these to true, and you'll see I've got some tags that are definitely not centered. Go ahead and run that in place. And I now have my room name centered. We also have the ability, and again, it ran it by default. I don't want to spoil all the fun. So this renumbers all of our doors based on our room, and we can have a prefix, so P, and then a separator. I have a dash. I go ahead and run that. And you'll see all of our rooms are now based on the room number. So 205, 201-2, 201. This is the hall. 201-4-3. So you can see how it very quickly renumbers those based on a very common requirement to have the room numbers based, the door numbers based off of the room. This coffee shop one's fairly new. When it came out, when I was taking a look at the Built North America, it's just a couple little simple nodes, but this one's pretty handy, and I can see it coming into being of use. And basically what it does is it simply copies a parameter information from one spot to another. So in this case, I'm copying information from the door mark to the door finish. And if I select this particular door, you'll see there is a mark. There is nothing in the finish. I go ahead and run this, and you'll now see that the information that was in the mark category is now in the finish category. Again, not earth-shattering, but you can see how something like that, simple little node, could make your life easy if you had to copy a ton of information over inside of Revit. Data Shapes is a super cool package that really might be becoming one of an essential packages. One of the things that this does is it sometimes tends to scare people a little bit because the nodes are quite large and there's lots of stuff. But what this allows us to do is pull information out of the project and gives us a pop-up window right inside of Revit that we can use to input information inside of Revit without going back into Dynamo. And this comes in handy if we're using the Dynamo player, or if we just want more input ability inside of Revit itself. It also is kind of fun because it gives us the ability to add logos to our pop-up. So if you're creating content for your company library and you want to have it branded, you can do it this way. So this is from my other session that I did at Built North America, where I created a script to adjust some furniture. So what this will showcase is the fact that we have the pop-ups that come into play. So if I just make this half screen again, nothing selected, I'm going to go ahead and run this script. And as you can see, it popped up my little box here. I've got the little BIM Cider logo. I choose how much I want to rotate furniture, 50 degrees. I set the value. Then it pops up the next interface, which is this case, I want to select my furniture. So I say select furniture. I choose my pieces. I don't have to hold down control. I can select as many as I want. The key thing is I have to hit this finish up here that's sort of hiding. Then I set my value, and it rotated my furniture. Well, the rotating the furniture was kind of cool. The whole point of that is the stuff that we can do with this data shapes node by having those pop-ups come in place, and the fact that we can brand them out a logo, do whatever we want. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with that data shapes node. It's definitely one to take a look at, as they all are. But that one was definitely moving its way towards the essential list. This little one is called a Dynamo PDF, and what this does, and it's already ran, is it allows you to manipulate and bring in information from a PDF. So say you're working with content spec sheets, for example, and you were given it in PDF form. This actually goes in and pulls the information from the PDF and brings it in. So in this case, I'm reading my handout from Built North America in PDF, and it brings out the entire. So this is my entire handout inside of Dynamo. I'm not sure what I'd want to do with the entire handout, but it's in there. Or we can do simply paragraphs. We've got just the first page, or in this case, 13 of 36 page inside here. Again, the idea that allows us to pull in PDF information. I also hear people from time to time talking about ways to improve PDF printing through Revit. There's some interfaces through this Dynamo PDF that allow you to print PDFs through the Dynamo interface that may be helpful. If you work with Navisworks, then a must-have is absolutely Dynaworks. Dynaworks is a node that allows you to interact with Navisworks. Now, yes, I have to have Revit open because that's how I interact and get into the node, but it's actually playing with Navisworks. There's versions of this package for 15, 16, 17, and 18 versions of Navisworks. The one I'm going to show you here was going to pop up and actually open Navisworks and allow me to work with it and then save the file out. But we can also pull in clash detection, see clashes, all that stuff with Navisworks. Simply just run this. It's going to actually start up Navisworks. Pull it up on the screen. I'll be able to manipulate Navisworks. And then it's going to save the file out as a different name in a different location. As you can see, I now have access to Navisworks. And as you can see, it saved it as pdug NWF. And if you look where it actually went to, it was called Carpole NWF. And then it saved it out in a different location as pdug NWF. Again, very tip of the iceberg. But if you do work with Navisworks, I highly recommend taking a look at the Dynaworks. There's also the website in the Excel spreadsheet that I had put together to go take a look at some of the demos that Adam's put together, the gentleman that's created it. This next package, Juggernaut, has some pretty cool stuff in it, but it also has the best logo of any Dynamo package out there. So if I scroll down to Juggernaut and I open it up, anybody that follows the comics would know who Juggernaut is. I just think it's really cool. More importantly, is one of the things that it can do is allows you to have checkboxes inside of Dynamo. Doesn't sound like a lot until you see what I'm about to do. When I pull this through, it gives me a visual checkbox. So I pulled in all of the rooms. So now I have all of the rooms inside of my project, which gives me an output. If I only wanted those 3, My list now includes just the ones that I've checked it. So it gives you the ability to pull in information and quickly manipulate it with a simple checkbox. If there's a check, it shows up in the list. No check, no list. Very handy node to have. Next one is landform. If you do much work with landscape architecture, this node could be your new best friend. So the first one is there's a random math generator. It's a cool little node. If I select this, goes through, does some random math for me, and starts at 3, goes to 129. I need 7 things on my list, and so it just randomly gives me 374, 129, 125. So if you think back to when we were talking about doing facades and you need to have randomly generated patterns, a quick little way to get some random numbering. In this particular instance, because the majority of the package has to deal with landscape architecture, this is randomly generating tree patterns for a lot. The other thing that we can do, and this is pretty cool, if you've ever run into this, if I go to the location, you'll see that I have 2 slabs. Now I have to try to get them to meet, and if you've ever tried to make slabs meet or slope, you know it's not the most friendly interface. Never fear, landforms has you covered. So you select the elements that you want to match. Hit run. And we've now made it work. And if we were to do it the other way, top first, first one you select stays, the other one comes to meet it. So you can see we did an up ramp instead of a down ramp. Very cool little process. It saves you a ton of time trying to work with ramps inside of normal Revit. Next one is LRZ, which is Living Room Crafts. It's a blog. My little name won't make any sense if you don't read Martin's blogs, but basically all of his blogs have to do with songs, and they're usually 80s punk songs. So the fact that I named his graph after a Hall & Oates song, he would find amusing and upsetting all at the same time. What this simple node does is allows you to take 2 lists and it compares what's in the first list, what's in the second list, what's in both lists. If I simply run that, and as you can see, in list 2 but not list 1, so 7, 8, kiss, cat. List 1 but not list 2, 1, 3, dog, kiss. And what's in both lists, frog and 45. So again, if you're trying to compare and find out what's in lists, you can very quickly pull that through and see what's going on. The next one is a package by Marcello Scambalori. And what this does is it gets you information, a few little things. One, it pulls out the element ID, and sometimes this is important when you're working with something, you need to find out what the element ID is. So I can just very quickly select the element, and then it gives me the element ID. We also saw earlier, working with PDFs. This is very similar. It allows me to pull in information from an actual Word doc, so from a DOC or DOCX. So again, maybe you got your specs in a Word format instead of in a PDF. As you can see, I browse to where it is, hit run, and I now have all of that information available to me inside of Dynamo in a string format. Now, one other thing that I can't not show when we're talking about Marcello's package, if I go down to simplex, which is simply complex, we have simple, which are the things we are looking at, and then we have complex, which if I pull this onto here, is Marcelo's world-famous Revit cow, now dubbed the Dynamo cow. So as you can see, just by putting that on the canvas, I created a cow. And if I go back, I can adjust the rotation degree of the head. No practical purpose, but when you have a Dynamo cow that you can turn its head, you just have to do it. Getting close. Steam nodes. This is also one of the most downloaded packages, so it could definitely be one to throw in the essential packages. Some of the things that we can do with the Steam nodes, we can align views on sheets. I know I get a lot of people asking about that. So if I take a look at my plan here, you'll see I've got two views and where they're located. I go to my 103, you'll see where my plans are located. So I'm going to align these views. Now, if you're doing this in the real world, you would have a template that had your views in place. You wouldn't use one to do the other, but this will show the points. You'll see that how these will manipulate to mirror what I showed on the 102 page. And you can see they've moved to match what was on 102. It is working by matching the center of the crop region. So that's how it's done. It's not a corner. It finds the center of the crop region, and then it matches all of the centers for all the crop regions. We've seen a similar version of this before. We can apply view templates. So if I scroll up and take a look at my stair section, you'll see what it looks like now. I'm going to apply my PDUG view template. Very quickly applied that view template. And if we created something that we didn't want, we can also delete that stuff. And you'll see that my stair section has been deleted. And if something wasn't deleted, it pulls out a list to tell you what cannot be deleted. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but sometimes you have a lot of stuff that you need to delete. You can throw in a list of all the stuff that you've gathered that needs to be deleted, views, CAD views, things that you want. And I don't know if you heard me snap. I snap my fingers, and they're all gone and deleted out. All right, 2 more to go. Wombat. Yes, they all seem to have very interesting and strange names. This comes from the... Oh, I just forgot which firm it is now that does this. Doesn't matter. What these guys allow you to do is to change up a family type. So if I have, I'm going to go back into my floor plan, scroll in place, select my door. So you can see it's clearly a double door. I can swing it out for a single. And you can see we've swapped that out. Not a big thing. We can easily do that inside of Revit. But again, you'd think of the implications when you have to do that to 100 or 200 or 400 different doors, and the fact that we can do it very quickly using a package and a node. And zebra. We have to end on a Z. A couple cool things we could do here. Sort room and level parameters. So this allows us to, and again, I'm just using rooms here, by a whole bunch of different things. So as you see, I've got a bunch of rooms in my project, and I've got some different things here to sort by. So I want to sort by area, run. Now we've got all of our information, our rooms, the levels that they're on, and in this case, the parameter, which was area. I switch that out for number, rooms, levels that they're on, level 1, level 2. In this case, the parameter was the number. We want to know some perimeter, area, level, perimeter. So it's one of those nodes that can be whatever we want it to be based on the information that we want to pull in. With this same package, we can also create our own fill patterns. So if I want to create a herringbone pattern, I can create a herringbone pattern. If I want to create a brick pattern, I can create a brick pattern. Again, ways that we can do this and manipulate it inside of Dynamo. And I know that says it, but I do have one other one real quick. And it wins for the best name, especially if you're a fan of 70s rock-ish. If you know Dexy's Midnight Runners, this is Dexy's Midnight Nodes. And it also has some pretty cool things that we can work with. Now, I don't have an actual definition like I did with the other ones. This is a package I was putting together, or some information I was putting together to be able to change the line types inside of a project. The cool things that come from the Dexy's Midnight node is a couple things. One, it allows me to match lists. So what comes from list A and list B, what's matched and what's not matched. And then it also allows me to convert Booleans by value. So a lot of times when we're working through Dynamo scripts, we'll end up with trues and falses. And that's how we run things. If it's Boolean, so if it's yes, then we get this information. If it's no or false, we get this information. What this allows us to do is choose what information is true and what information is false based on our lists. You see we got trues and falses. We've got all of our lists hidden and thin, and it comes on through. Again, this particular example is meant to change line types inside of our project here. So we changed a bunch of line types from thin to thick. But the idea here and what I wanted to show, aside from the coolest name, was these very useful nodes that exist inside of Dexy's Midnight nodes. All right, so that is our whirlwind tour. So before I get into talking about the package management, I'm going to take a break and see if we have any questions on all of that goodness that we just went through.
I wanted to ask about, earlier you were talking about and you were talking about
Carl, do we still have you?
Yeah, I'm still there. Could somebody repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. You were talking about beeper and filtering, and does that filter more specifically than categories? So, like, I kind of missed what you said on that, and I felt like maybe you said that it filters more specifically than categories. Like, you can filter specific families.
Let's just open it up again and take a look. But yes, it does give you more flexibility with your sorting, or filtering in this case.
Awesome.
And the way that it comes through, because we're pulling through categories. So we're filtering based on a category, but then we can filter pretty much whatever we want from that. So we create a big bucket, which is the category, and then we can filter by pretty much whatever we want. As you can see, I just randomly chose chair.
So But then the node will accept any list of elements, correct? It doesn't have
Correct.
to be gathered by category. It could be gathered any
It
other
does-
way.
Just as long as it comes in, as you can see, it's looking for an actual element. So as long as it's an element, it'll accept it. That's correct.
The doors renumbered by room, what package was that from again?
Oh, that is a very good question. I think it was by Morpheus.
Oh, I thought it was BVM.
But
My notes is BVM.
Maybe BVN?
Let's check. Yes, we have a winner. BVN.
and so that node automatically creates a prefix when there's two openings inside of a room?
Sorry, I missed that. It does what when there's two openings in a room?
It adds a prefix to the room number, to the door number, sorry. When there's two
Cor-
doors.
That's correct. And in this case, it's automatically 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can it differentiate between the to room and from room?
It does not at this case, at this instance. So yeah, at this moment, it's just 2 room. All right, if there's no more questions on that, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the package management. So I'm going to go ahead and throw you all back on mute for a second just so I can get finished up here. All right, so the last little thing to talk about is package management. So where are my packages? So when you download a package by default, this is where it's stored. So on your C drive, underneath the username, app data, roaming, Dynamo Revit, this 1.3 is whatever the most current version is that you have installed, underneath packages, and that's where they're all stored. Inside of each package, you're going to have a bin, a definition, an extras, and this package JSON. Remember to check extras, because there could be other stuff in there. Like I was showing you with the rhythm package, inside extras are all those Revit families that come with it. And there can be all kinds of stuff hidden inside that extras folder. So it's always a good place to check once you have your packages put in place. As we've seen me do a couple times already, if we're inside of Dynamo, we go to settings, we scroll down, we've got manage nodes and package paths. When we select on that, it brings up where that path is. And again, by default, it's going to have the path that I just set up there, user, app data, roaming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be your default location. That's where all your stuff is going to go. Now, what if we want to have our stuff stored on a network, or we want multiple locations? So again, we go back to settings. We go to our manage node packages. We hit the little plus sign to add a new path. We navigate to wherever said package or path is, and then it now adds it into our location. You'll notice I've got highlighted there in red that the top path is the default save location. So in this particular instance, if I went on and downloaded Dexy's Midnight Nodes, I would save it to my C drive, not to the network package. If I flipped it so that the Z/packages was on top and the C was second, then it's going to save it to the network drive first. I'm still going to be able to see the packages that are contained in both locations, but this default save location is the top one. Also to keep in mind, if we happen to have multiple versions of a package, so on the F packages, I have Clockwork version 1.0.3. But on the C drive, which is the top package, I have Clockwork 1.0.2. When I start up and run the Dynamo, I'm going to have access to 1.0.2. Whatever is on top wins. If there's multiple versions of the same package, whichever one is higher up on the list, in this case, the C drive, because it's over top of the F drive, the C drive is going to win. If you want to switch that, I can move my F package up, hit accept changes, close down Dynamo, reopen it. Sometimes that'll work. Sometimes, depending on how much stuff is moving in the background, you have to close Revit first, open Revit, and then open it back up. And now, because I had F on top, I'm going to get my Clockwork 1.0.3 because it's on the top. Now, if we want to do a network deployment, and we want to do this to multiple locations, rather than going to everybody's location and type in a bunch of information, we can do it through an XML file. Now, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, I learned about this method from Ian Siegel, also from one of the lynda.com Dynamo courses. The particular one that this little nugget came from is called Dynamo for Revit Project Setup. Ian has the other 3 Dynamo courses that are on lynda.com. They're all definitely worth taking a look at. But if you are doing a bunch of Dynamo for setting up your project templates and things like that, I highly recommend the Revit Project Setup version. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to look for the Dynamo settings.xml file. That's where all the settings are stored. And as you can see here, it's in the same location as the packages. It's just one rung above, so I didn't actually go into the package folders. And this is what that looks like, just simply opening up with Notepad or whatever you want to use it with. And it tells all the information, all the settings about all things to do with Dynamo. Now, if I want to use this, you're going to save a copy of it somewhere to use for your deployment purposes. The first thing that you're going to want to do is delete that original user location. You're going to want to do that for 2 reasons. One, because if you're the person making this, it's going to have your username in it, so you don't want everybody going to your location. It's going to cause an issue. But you also want the network location to be the first location that shows up so that everybody's always pointing to network location. And by default, if you don't have a local location inside of Dynamo, when you run Dynamo, it's going to create one anyways. So no harm, no foul by deleting that local location, but it allows you to have the network as your default and put it on the top of your list. It's also a good idea while you're taking the time to create this to just go ahead and go in and delete all the recent files. The recent files are what you see when you open up Dynamo and there's that list of recent files. You're probably not going to want everybody to see the recent files that you were in. You don't want to push that out when you're doing your deployment, so you can just delete those. Now you're ready, you can save your XML file, and you can go around to the office to the users and replace their current Dynamo settings XML file with the one you created. If you just have a few people, that's fine. If you have a lot of people, it probably makes more sense to use some sort of IT method to push the XML file out to all the machines overnight when you're doing your other deployments. And then when they come in and use Dynamo the next morning, they're all pointed to the proper network location. Again, the downside of having everybody pointed to one network direction is that as people download stuff, it's going to put it into that network location. So maybe that leaves something to be said to keep the local location first and everybody access to that network file second. So as somebody's curating and going through the versions that everybody wants, they throw those in the network drive. Everybody has access to them. But if somebody's just downloading and testing a bunch of stuff, it doesn't start populating people's drives that maybe you don't want to be out there. And with that, we've made it to the end. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you guys and see if you have any questions. All right, you're unmuted. Ask away.
I have one question. I had downloaded some of those initial 5 essential packages, and some of them actually aren't showing up in my library, even if I search them. I don't know if that's like a Dynamo glitch or if there's something on
So you know you have the package loaded and you don't see it in the library?
correct. Like, they're all showing up in my installed packages under managed packages.
Yeah.
We don't have to troubleshoot something.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I have seen that come up before, and sometimes it's just as easy as uninstalling and reinstalling the package for whatever reason. It could also be how you downloaded it. Sometimes if you downloaded it and just dropped it into the folder as opposed to doing it to the interface, sometimes that can be an issue. And sometimes the newer version of the package is just a bit sketchy, if that's a word. But I don't have a definitive answer right now.
Hey, Carl, this is Matt Jezik from Autodesk. You can also check the status prompt at the very bottom. Like there's a console log that you can pull up, and if it fails, you'll actually see that right there. I can show you that right now.
Yeah, sure.
It's always good to have an expert in the room.
I'm here to keep you honest, man.
Thanks.
We're pretty lucky on that one.
I'm just glad I knew after the presentation, not before.
Usually, like, this is basically like the log that, so like as it loads up, Dynamo PDF, like, just can't.
One quick question. Do you ever experience issues with packages with similar named nodes interfering with each other?
I haven't found an issue with that per se, other than trying to find them or trying to understand what they do. When you do a search for, I don't know, sheets, and 100 different sheets come up and there's no description or difference. But I haven't had an actual sort of wire crossing instance. Not that couldn't happen. I haven't had that issue though.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Are there any courses online that teaches like Python for Dynamo?
I don't know if there's a Python specific class, but I do know there was a session that was quite popular at Built by Conrad Soban about Python and Dynamo, and so I'm sure there will be more, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a class, but I'm not